Ontario Premier Doug Ford called an election last month, almost a year and a half before his term expired. It was an interesting decision given that things aren't exactly going well in the province under his leadership.
The Ford government tries to distance itself from the Greenbelt scandal.
A shortage of doctors in Ontario, it's going to get worse.
A dire financial picture being painted by Ontario's universities.
Food bank usage has now outpaced capacity and resources.
Despite all this, there's a good chance that Ford could still be re-elected. How has he managed to stay popular while creating and overseeing so many problems? Number 1, phony populist messaging. Doug Ford's political superpower is his persona as just another average, hard-working guy. He accomplishes this with folksy language, literally.
So folks, be prepared.
You folks are hearing it everywhere.
Well, folks.
In supposed alliance with the little guy, he postures as an enemy of the rich and elite. This routine conveniently hides the fact that he's a lifelong member of the very class he pretends to hate. His family is worth millions, thanks to an inheritance from Doug Ford Sr., a former politician and multi-millionaire.
Raised my family out here. We started a business on a ping pong table in a basement.
Despite Ford consistently serving private, wealthy interests, his regular Joe moments convince people that he's on their side.
Driving around in his pickup truck, helping pole-stranded motorists out of snowbanks.
I gotcha. I know.
And in his own way, he's a brilliant communicator. During the fear and uncertainty of the COVID-19 pandemic, Ford went through a rebrand. He shifted from a brash and confrontational father figure
It's a job-killing, family-hurting tax.
to a softer, more sympathetic caregiver.
Well, good afternoon.
I swear he even changed his facial expressions.
Do you know how to make your eyes kind?
Number 2, a multiracial coalition. Previously, the Liberals held power by dominating places where people of color and immigrants live. Ford turned that around. In 2018, he won seats in Brampton, Mississauga, and Markham, as well as the Toronto boroughs of North York, Scarborough, and Etobicoke. In 2022, he held those gains. He took a party that was seen as very white and rural into a multiracial voting coalition that could be a contender pretty much anywhere outside of most downtown big city ridings. Ford and his late brother, Rob, seem to understand an important racial dynamic of our times. Being a down-to-earth and self-deprecating white politician is seen as a nice contrast to an aloof and self-serious white politician. If you're relatable enough, people might even overlook your more explicitly racist messaging.
My Jewish doctor, my Jewish lawyer, my Jewish accountant. Don't come to Canada if you're going to start terrorizing neighborhoods.
While his racism slips out every now and again, he doesn't lead with it the way that many modern far-right conservative movements do. Instead, he tells us he's here for everyone, as long as they work hard and play fair. But considering the huge racial inequalities in the province, you'd think he'd talk about how Ontarians of different racial groups are actually doing. He doesn't. There's one exception though. He loves telling us how no one has done more for, insert group here, than him.
There's no other politician outside of Rob Ford that has supported the black community more than I have.
It's part of what academic Cheryl Thompson has called Doug Ford's white savior complex. Even when Ford suggests that immigrants are only here to live off of the province's wealth,
You come here like every other new Canadian has come here, you work your tail off. If you think you're coming to collect the dole and sit around, not going to happen.
he divides people into good immigrants versus bad immigrants. And he gives people the opportunity to identify themselves as the good ones, the honest ones, the worthy ones.
He ain't talk about me.
In white-dominated Canada, this brand of benevolent racism, combined with appeals to hard work and sacrifice, seems to be a pretty successful formula. Number 3, quiet cuts. Where some past governments have loudly broadcast their cuts, Ford has made many of them by stealth. Sometimes the government has simply refused to provide the necessary funding to a public program or service.
More than $1 billion of COVID-19 funding meant for healthcare wasn't spent last year.
The government has underspent its education budget by $432 million.
In other cases, Ford has delayed spending on things that the government will eventually have to do, like repairs to infrastructure. In 2021, the Provincial Accountability Office said 45% of Ontario's municipal infrastructure, like roads, bridges, and water systems, needed repairs.
It's not a matter of, if you're going to pay, it's a matter of when you're going to pay and how much you're going to pay.
And if all else fails, you can always try to buy the goodwill of the public. Take, for example, those $200 checks that Ford mailed to every Ontarian, regardless if they're dead broke or a multimillionaire, right as he was calling this election. It's not going to change your life the way good healthcare or education might, but it's a nice distraction from what the government should be doing.